Do you speak a little English? This is a new series I thought about yesterday. I'm enjoying Ted Lasso as a TV show again, and there's tears for me pretty much every episode. There is some challenges. There are challenges and adversities that the characters go through, and I find that very touching, And I just wish I would decide to watch it even a third time, but I've decided not to watch it a third time in the future because I had forgotten how disappointed I was the first time I watched it in the language use. So many swear words, and often done in front of children, and even often done in front of teachers in charge of children. And that is the norm. So if that is the norm in the UK, then I think it's time for me, as a Canadian-born, although French was my first language, to teach all these English-speaking countries, or people that actually might want to learn English, how to use this language, in human standards, let's say, as a way to evaluate it. So by human standards. So some of the character that swears the most at some point made an effort and said one or two feeling words in some of the episodes. The thing is there are many feeling words in the English language, and of course it takes an Homo sapien that has undergone the maturation process to actually be able to use these words. Somebody that's self-actualized into being an Homo sapien, and of course you can tell just by the way English countries use the English language that the norm is not Homo sapiens over there making use of language. So what I've decided to do is start a new series where I will be introducing certain words and defining them, and even saying when they were first defined like this, because often words are misused later on, and these English-speaking countries don't seem to have a problem with losing their language or confusing their language or being misinformed by their own language, even when they're trying not to misinform themselves. So language is one of the things that we keep thinking makes us so much more evolved than other species. Now, other species also communicate, and in ways sometimes that are much more complex and subtle than we do. And they don't seem to use it as much as we do for deceit, for example. So, we gotta tone down the human chauvinism here, and hopefully this series will show us that although there was potential in us developing a stable society, we've never really gotten out of the proto-society stage, and we've never gotten out of the proto-civilization stage. I didn't cite civilization as the first word, but it'll soon be coming up. Civilization, defining it properly, and then looking to see if that applies anywhere on Earth today, and it does not. So we have to stop thinking we're up there on the ladder of evolution for the concept of sentience and sapience, which I will have to also include early on in this series so that we can be on the same page. What I've chosen right now is the concept of cybernetics. Now, if you're watching a science fiction show and they'll use that word, you can suspend your understanding of the word just to enjoy the story. But this word, cybernetics, was, and by the way, my source is Merriam-Webster Dictionary, okay? And we could look at some other ones after. So this is from 1948, first known use, okay, in the meaning defined above. The science of communication and control theory that is concerned especially with the comparative study of automatic control systems, such as the nervous system and brain, and mechanical electrical communication systems. Let's look at another definition where maybe Wikipedia would be involved. Cybernetics is the transdisciplinary study of circular processes such as feedback systems, where outputs are also inputs. It is concerned with general principles that are relevant across across multiple contexts, including in ecological, technological, biological, cognitive, and social systems, and also in practical activities such as designing, learning, and managing. The field is named after an example of circular causal feedback, that of steering a ship, the ancient Greek helmsperson. In steering a ship, the helmsperson adjusts, well, there was the Greek word there that I didn't try to pronounce. In steering a ship, the helmsperson adjusts their steering in continual response to the effect it is observed as having, forming a feedback loop through which a steady course can be maintained in a changing environment, responding to disturbances from crosswinds and tide. Cybernetics' transdisciplinary character has meant that it intersects with a number of other fields, leading to it having both wide influence and diverse interpretations. Okay, I'm going to stop with the definitions and just go back to examples that I give to people sometimes about one way to understand cybernetics. Remember that it relates to a system, that it has feedback loops. So I call myself, by the way, the professor of socio-cybernetics, and I would defend that title, as I've said before, in big part because when you come up with a grand unification theory in the social sciences that explains a lot of what happened in the past, what's happening now, and because of its predictive abilities, easily what will happen in the future, then, these social systems, which also operate through cybernetics, makes it that I can call myself the professor of socio-cybernetics. So some examples I give is a simple thermostat, which would turn on or off based on, the measurements of, temperature. There's also other things that people that study climate science would understand. For example, the libido effect in, ice, reflecting light back out into space. So more ice, more reflection of the sun's rays, less ice, more of the absorbing of this, creating an elevation of, heat. Did I pronounce that well? Libido aspect. And sometimes I get the word wrong. And I'll look at it before we go. Okay, but there's one more thing I want to say. Let's say for people that are studying cybernetic systems related to climate science. Aside from having heat arrive on Earth from our main sun here, the closest sun, the closest star, is we also have other sources of heat on the planet. Now, I'm talking about sources. So sources doesn't talk about, for example, the greenhouse effect. Sources of heat would be coming from the inside, right, from the hot molten core, but also from what is called a radioactive decay. So somebody studying Earth system has to include so many different fields and understanding and calculations that it becomes complex in a way that, if we have to, although cybernetics is a fairly simple concept, when you study systems that are as old and evolve and fluid and ever-changing, and including so many varieties of systems within this global system, then you're talking about something that we've just barely just begun to understand. And one of the reasons that this can be explained is, again, as the professor of socio-cybernetics, I know that intellectual laziness and human chauvinism has resulted in us, having, let's say, faith as one of our primary tools through history instead of tool of last resort as a thinking tool. That means religions or magical types of thinking, if not supernatural, have prevented us from pursuing the more scientific worldview and paradigms. So, of course, we're just starting a little bit more now out of desperation to understand this. Now, when I say this, do I mean one particular scientist who's the maybe acknowledged expert, or do I mean our species? Again, there's a lot of ways that we have to decide how to use language efficiently. And when we allow words that have been used in a certain way and put down in our dictionaries to be used in a certain way for so long, and we allow it to be misused, then we are confusing ourselves with the concept of language. It's almost like we should just use nonverbal communication until we solve this issue. Okay, I'm just looking up libido effect. Oh, and again, I got it wrong. I'm going to put ice. I think it's albedo, and I haven't had a girlfriend for a long time, so that could be it. Yes, it's albedo. So I corrected myself. Again, I do this in videos on purpose all the time. And this is a word I've gotten wrong a few times. It could be because, again, no girlfriend for a long time. But ice albedo feedback is a climate change feedback where a change in the area of ice caps, glaciers, and sea ice alters the albedo and surface temperature of a planet. Because ice is very reflective, it reflects far more solar energy back to space than open water or any other land cover. Now, you know what's pretty scary about people that are very, very hot and complain that they're very, very hot, and they still denial that the truck that they're in, where the air conditioning is running and the engine is running, as they're saying this to their friends, smoking a cigarette with the window open. There's no sign of intelligence in such behaviors compared to many other species on this planet. But if you tell them, hey, have you thought maybe of getting out of your truck and sitting under that tree in the shade, or driving your truck close to a body of water that is big, where there's natural air conditioning, or have you heard of maybe hanging out in your basement once in a while when it's very hot, where there's natural cooler temperature? And again, people that think that we are just needing to find the right technological advance just to solve our problems, when the first initial form of technology is human thinking tools, which we have neglected and are now not just falling behind, but we seem to be unable to use the higher functions of our brains to even realize, and would have been able to correct this, that is the first form of technology that we have been ignoring. Because, look at the news today. We find that things like pagers or cell phones or tablets are used to kill innocent people elsewhere, like children, because the paranoia of all the other wrong worldviews, like the supernatural and the magical, like money and religions, have made it that most of the world now finds it acceptable or not surprising or not outrageous enough to talk about it, like I am with you, in their lives. It's horrible that we keep turning technology against us, and we keep ignoring the human thinking tools technology, which is really what would save us if we decided how screwed up we are as a species beforehand, and how this is not the legacy that we want to live for and allow our lives to be for our kids and for our life-giving